Chapter 9. Dances, Doctrines, and Desires. "This is like the third straight dance where you don't have a date," Kara stated, and it took Kent 5 seconds of silence to realize they were talking about him. "Who, me?" he asked, looking up from his phone. They were on an intermission break during final rehearsals for the fall musical. This was the part of the production he hated most. All the work he enjoyed was over. Now he was stuck flipping light switches until the end of show that Sunday. At least the girls were having fun. Most of the time he tried to feed off their energy, but the talk had apparently shifted to January's snowball. "Of course you," Kara glared. "You're the only guy here." Her hair was tied back in a dyed brown bun. The director, Miss Rosberg, had initially wanted to do Hairspray, but vastly overestimated how many non-white cast members they would have this semester. Or in the town at all, for that matter. And so they had shifted gears to Beauty and the Beast. Kara had hoped to go colorful with her blonde hair this time around, but was limited with Rosberg's commitment to realism in 18th century France. One of their fellow sophomores was sitting down the hall. "Trace is a guy." "Well, Trace isn't going to ask me to the dance," she hissed. I mean, not like that." She hesitated, saying the quiet part out loud. Trace was a boy, in high school theater. "He could still take you," Morgan offered. "Yeah, but I want, like, a date, Kara complained, turning to Kent. "Like you." A horrified look suddenly crossed her face. "Hold on, you're not gay too, are you?" Kent left his phone in his lap and held up his hands. "Honestly, is it the way I dress?" Kent defended, trying to remember who else had asked him that in the last few months. Morgan shrugged, smiling. "I mean, you are an attractive theater boy from New York," she teased. "The chances—" "I'm not a theater boy," Kent rejected. Morgan shrugged, gesturing around the backstage hallway. "This is theater," she noted. "As far as I'm aware, you're a boy." Kent rolled his eyes. "Good guess." She smiled, the heavy rouge on her cheeks looking even more intense. "Ergo, theater boy." "Shut up," he laughed, playfully shoving her off a 3-legged stool and onto a pile of their backpacks. She sat there surprised before joining the others, laughing as Kent pulled her back to her feet. "Why aren't you taking anyone?" Darren Pratner was not a part of their usual group, but she had gravitated toward them as the production wore on. "When did Snowball suddenly become about me?" he questioned, feeling trapped. "Well, you're hot, single, and none of us have dates," Kara railed. "Reasonable progression, really." He shuddered in his black sweatshirt. Nothing would displease him more than spending 3 hours alone while she talked his ear off. "Morgan doesn't have a date yet," Darren noted. Every eye turned, and Morgan's face turned sharp white, then quickly matched the color of her stage makeup. "He's going to ask me," she shivered. "You're still seeing what's-his-face?" Kent asked. "You know his name," Morgan scowled. "And yes, I am." She turned to Darren, who was clearly out of the loop. "Ethan Trench." Darren shook her head. "I don't know who that is," she said. "No one does," Kent jabbed. "Okay, mister, I don't have a date for Snowball," Morgan huffed. "I don't insult your choices. You certainly don't get to criticize mine." Kent matched her intensity. "What choices?" he asked. "I don't know," she snarked. "How about the fact your best friend is Margot Driere?" Darren gasped, like she had suddenly been stabbed. "Oh God, actually?" She leaned forward on her stool. "Isn't she the one that—" "Yes," he hissed, not letting her finish the accusation, even if it was probably true. Kara crossed a leg over the other. "You know she talks to, like, every boy in school, don't you?" she added. "You know Grant Arden, the basketball player? He's a senior, and I see him snapping her, like, every morning before language." Kent glared at Morgan, furious at having to come to Margot's defense. "And didn't she get her boyfriend kicked out of the company?" Darren piled on quietly. "Because they... you know." "Why are we attacking my friends?" he cursed. "Because you attacked mine," Morgan shrugged. "Only fair." "I'm sorry your boyfriend has the personality of a sandwich," he dragged. "And I'm sorry your best friend is Margot Driere," she repeated. "You know, there are good things you could say about her." "Yeah. And I've had some pretty good sandwiches, too," she smirked. "Your move." He started, but his thoughts were interrupted by the gargantuan voice of their student director. "Places!" they yelled, with the most teeth-grinding sound imaginable. Ken stood in silence, continuing to glare at Morgan as her challenging look only made him more confused. Her pride was masking something. He was sure of it. He waited just long enough for the other girls to disappear through the stage door to take their places, unable to decipher Morgan's emotions. We're good, aren't we? He asked cautiously. Morgan raised her eyebrows twice. At first he thought she was being suggestive, but then the look faded to her normal smile, like she had reset herself. Of course we're good. She punched his bicep. I just can't let you show me up in front of my friends. He appreciated her avoiding the label our. Good, he sighed. Because I don't like leaving things unresolved. Margot taught me that one. Well, she's good for something then. Morgan winked. You could take her, you know. You already skipped dances with her. She'd given him a hard time for missing homecoming, joking that she'd been looking forward to her one-year follow-up dance, but things had seemed to work out for her fine in his absence. She'd finally asked Ethan to dance instead, and she'd been talking about him for months. You worry about yourself, he insisted. I don't need a date to the dance to make me happy. Well, that's progress, she teased. What happened to the Kent I knew? He knew she meant it as a friendly taunt, but he thought he had an honest answer for the question. China. When my best friend died. At least that was when things began to feel different. Now Morgan was suggesting he try his luck with Margot on a weekly basis. His refusal to engage was why she had turned to bullying him about their friendship. But the idea was preposterous to Kent in every way. Margot was dealing with enough. Besides, even if it were even possible for her to feel that way about him, he could never do that to Wyatt's memory. Could he? Before he could say anything, Morgan added, Also, are we still on for next weekend? Several months prior, they had somehow stumbled over a conversation about Doctor Who. It had been since Liz died that he had indulged the interest, but his worry of tainting those memories with her had been eclipsed by a desire to watch the new season. Morgan had made a comment about her never seeing it, despite it always popping up on our Tumblr feed, and with the interest of both parties mounting as the episodes were airing, Kent had decided not to let the show sit in the attic of his mind and pay Liz's act forward for Morgan the same way she had done for him. Is your boyfriend really okay with that? I don't know, is yours? Ken felt his face drop as Morgan blushed with satisfaction. Not gay. She raised her eyebrows again. You're so cute when you're offended, she teased. And it's not like it's just the two of us. Morgan's best friend and squadmate, Jess Demerol, was the only member of their friend group with parents in the city, making their house the only reasonable place they could gather in front of a screen to watch, given their lack of access to one another's common rooms. Jess is going to be bored out of her mind, he scoffed. Well, tough, Morgan trumped. Hey! The student director was back, storming through the back corridor to chew them out for being the only ones not in place. Morgan smiled at Kent, knowing exactly what he was thinking. I'll talk to you later, she flickered again, before rushing through the stage doors and leaving him to deal with the punishment. The conversation left him confused, mainly because he could not figure out what she was hiding. As he watched her the rest of the evening, flying across the stage in her costume, that confusion turned to frustration. And by the time he reached the residential center that evening, he had become confused about his own thoughts on the matter. A quick viewing of golf highlights in his room helped to clear his mind. The show went off without a hitch that weekend, though Kent felt increasingly isolated in his spot by the lights. Afterwards, despite Morgan's insistence that he join the cast and crew for post-show parties and dinners, he declined for the sake of his sanity, and returned to the common room with the same nightly agenda. Margot was in Central Asia for the weekend on a hockey trip, so disappearing came easily. She'd been far less insufferable as the hockey season progressed. Furious at her being left off the varsity squad, Margot had done everything in her power to earn her chance back. In the games Kent had attended, Margot was, on average, responsible for no less than 5 goals, usually scoring at least a pair herself. One blowout victory over Italy had seen her walk through defenders like they were kindergartners, and net 4, which Kent came to realize was ridiculous for someone playing defense. She still hadn't earned the place she felt she deserved on varsity, but the coaches were losing their reasons to keep her away. According to Margot, she was the highest scoring player in the company not suiting up for their top teams, in multiple categories. Goals, assists, something called plus-minus, and, to less of her favor, penalty minutes. Even then, she was the only player on both sides of the barrier who had not been given a night off, traveling with the team everywhere they traveled, which so far also included stops in Germany and Eastern Europe. The competition was doing wonders for her both physically and mentally. She was smiling more than she had in a very long time. Margot arrived back in town Sunday afternoon, albeit not in time to catch the final showing of the school musical before the curtain rose. Kent was forced to stay after to strike the set and be an objecting participant in the group photo, as he had done in the spring. But as soon as he was free to go, he did. The appearance of Morgan's personality-lacking boyfriend giving him clear permission to disappear. To his relief and satisfaction, his best friend was in the common room with Riley and Siobhan, though his excitement dropped upon noticing Johnny and Emma with them, making him the last to arrive in this impromptu squad meeting. As he felt his face dropping, every eye turning at the sound of the door, Margot jumped from her chair and ran over to hug him hello. "What is this?" he asked, louder than intended, completely forgetting his intended question about her trip. Margot turned around, looking at the others. "Oh, nothing," she said cautiously. "Broncos got blown out by the Chiefs, so I guess the magic is officially gone." Only then did Kent notice the TV, which was flashing football highlights. "Texans don't usually play late," Riley added. "We all just kind of gathered. Here, we'll make room." Kent had never noticed the short-sightedness of their common room design. The 2 armchairs and 3-seat sofa were enough for 5 people to sit comfortably around the screen. His inclusion in the squad made 6. "It's fine," he declined, noticing Emma on the couch beside Siobhan and suddenly feeling the urge to disappear and watch golf again. "I think I'm just going to head off and work on my Russian." Margot kept hold of his wrist. "I haven't seen you all week," she rejected. "You're not going to disappear to your room." Kent frowned, containing a frustrated sigh. He was desperate for Margot to understand he wanted nothing to do with the others so long as Johnny and Em were there, but Margot was insistent. "Come on," she urged. "I can stand." Embarrassed and without a choice, he followed her to the furniture, taking a seat opposite Johnny in the armchair vacated by Margot, who now stood to his right staring at the others. Emma and Johnny were both staring at the screen, while Riley and Siobhan counted talking about holiday plans. Her arm disappeared from Kent's view, apparently scratching his back. As soon as he noticed this, a phantom sensation shot up his spine, and Kent jerked to find Margot doing the same to him. He calmed, hoping no one else had noticed his jumpiness. Her eyes never looked down. He stiffened, flipping his brain to register the feeling as a comfort, not a threat. Emma gave a slight glance toward him, then to Johnny, still distracted by highlights before engaging with her brother. "You're actually leaving that soon?" she said, alarmed. "I mean, it's Salt Lake City," he argued. "It's not like we're going to New York or LA. "Still," Emma pushed. "How can you be sure nothing bad's going to happen?" "Are you still convinced those terrorists are out there?" Riley questioned. "How many times do they have to brag about it on the news, Amita? They're gone." Emma's face was reddening. "You can't know that." Riley pointed at the screen. 70,000 people don't know it either, but they're not going to let it stop them from watching the Texans suck, he half joked. "They hit those places to make themselves seen. They're not going to attack Salt Lake City." "The church has been through a lot worse," Siobhan reasoned. "But they're not attacking the church, are they?" Emma continued. "Emma, I'm tired of arguing about this," Riley voiced, but Emma was far from finished. Siobhan backed off as the 2 siblings continued bickering about security. Kent, despite the fear he still maintained from what had happened to his leg, was uninterested in hearing the argument, and turned to Margot as his only option of distraction. "How's the trip?" he asked, twisting his back so her hand would reach a sweet spot. "Hell?" she sighed, turning her usually sad eyes in his direction. They seemed less so today. "I can't stand 2 hours with them, let alone 2 20-hour flights. God, what'd you even do the whole time?" "Miracle, MVP, Goon, aside from hockey movies," he frowned. "That took up most of it, actually," she shrugged. "Slept a lot, tried to stretch. I don't know, I told you, 40 hours in a plane is hell." "Well, did you at least play well?" "Varsity blew it at the last second," she smiled. "But, yeah, I did fine." "How many this game?" 6. "You scored 6 goals?" He turned, loud enough that Em and Riley stopped to look in their direction. "No," Margot sighed slowly, turning her attention to the others. "I scored 3. The others were just assists." Johnny turned his head from the TV and spoke to Margot for the first time in months. "You had 6 points?" he asked, shocked. "As a defenseman?" Margot hardly acknowledged him. "JV hockey's easy." "Why are they still making you play down then?" Emma asked. "Varsity keeps losing games. I'm sure you'd make a difference." "Good question," Margot deadpanned. "Feel free to let me know when you figure it out." Everyone could feel her disillusion with her spot on the team. So much so that an awkward silence fell over the squad, the only sound in the room coming from the minimized commentary of the football game. "How's the last day of the musical?" Siobhan broke. "Fine," Kent said quickly, caring very little to discuss his chosen extracurricular. "What did you guys end up doing today?" He had meant his friends, but realized too late after the words came out that Johnny and Emma might use the invitation to talk about themselves. "Not a whole lot," Siobhan answered, looking over his shoulder at Margot. We got back earlier than expected, so Shiv and I went to watch Walker for a few hours, Margot added. Kent felt his gaze linger on Siobhan. You like kids too? She shrugged. It sounded like a fun invite, she claimed. I've never been to Xander's house before. Bit of a wild card, isn't he? Riley laughed. You'd be surprised how many houses in this country look like that, he said. Uncle Mark practically had his taxidermist on call. Well, at least he had his guns locked up, Siobhan recalled. The rest of the house might be a bit of a minefield for a toddler, but I had fun. Kent frowned. He can't walk yet, can he? The four of them listening burst out laughing. Kent, dearest, he's 4 months old, Siobhan cackled. He can hardly roll over. He could feel his face reddening again. Well, how am I supposed to know? I've never spent time around babies. Neither have I, she continued laughing. But I know what a 4-month-old can and can't do. I was talking about myself, honey. I'm clumsy as all get out. Riley was holding in a laugh. You really thought he could walk? I don't even know what the kid looks like, Kent screamed, feeling overwhelmed by the team up against him. Jesus, can I just go to bed? It's 6:25, Riley deflated. Oh, and a 16-year-old isn't allowed to choose his own bedtime either? Relax, Margot hushed, and the word was like a spell over him. Her hand returned to the base of his neck, forcing an involuntary shudder through his bones. Kent looked around at the others again, embarrassed. Sorry. You know, you're welcome to come with us next time, Siobhan offered. I'm sure Lisa wouldn't mind. He could feel Margot's claws around his spine, keeping him calm. I can't think of anything I would want to do less. But that's what I thought, Siobhan agreed, stretching in her seat. I mean, with my family, why would I ever want to replicate that with another generation? Amen, Emma echoed, her eyes staring up at the screen again. Riley looked over at his sister, apparently confused by the comment. When did you become such a feminist? Margot taunted. I'm not a feminist, she argued. I just don't want kids. Well, nor am I, Siobhan pitched in. But I understand how damaged we are because of this company, and if we want the cycle to end, the only way to do that is to end the line. Even agreeing with the sentiment, her surety sent another shiver down Kent's spine. That's... Margot started, searching for the right word. Morbid? I'm not saying you lot can't, Siobhan clarified. I'm not some genocidal eugenicist. I'm just saying I don't want kids. Besides, she turned to Riley. You and I might have some bizarre-looking combos. Emma had turned back to her brother, a concerned look on her face. You've always wanted kids, she remembered. I've always wanted to be a dad, he corrected. I never said they had to be my own. Margot's hand shifted away from Kent's neck, resting against the back of his shoulder. Yeah, but are you forgetting I'm adopted? He laughed. Plus, it's not like my kids would have to serve unless they came from the company already. Like your cousins. He turned to Siobhan, who gathered the eyes around her and clarified. My dad's brother has 3 kids. All of them were adopted externally, so none of them have to go to the care. Margot's grip loosened against him. Actually, she said. Doesn't that make you jealous? Siobhan smiled. Maybe a little, she articulated. Honestly, I was always more jealous of the fact they were adopted in general. They actually got to go in a temple when we were little to get sealed to their new parents. It was like the world stopped turning as soon as Siobhan stopped speaking. Margot's hand regripped Kent's shoulder like it was a hockey stick. Riley's small eyes popped from his brown face. Both Em and Johnny whipped in place to stare at Siobhan, their faces frozen as statues. Even the volume on the TV was not enough to keep the common room from utter silence. The words came from Emma's half-petrified face. What? Emma? Riley warned. Kent was confused. So was Siobhan. What? She questioned. What did you just say? Emma questioned. Siobhan's eyes darted to Riley, then to Kent and Margot. What? She repeated. About my cousins. They actually got to go in a temple when we were little, Johnny recited in his signature monotone. To get sealed with their new parents. Siobhan turned again to Emma, still confused and cautious. Yes? Emma unfroze. Her posture now as imposing as she could make it. What do you mean temple? She asked, incensed. What do you mean sealed to their parents? Again, Siobhan looked at Riley, his eyes stuck wide. Ken could tell she was physically uncomfortable, suddenly faking a small smile. I mean, they went to the temple in Preston for the sealing ceremony, she explained. The sealing ceremony, Emma huffed, her eyes the most vindictive blue Kent had ever seen. As in... the church, Siobhan said slowly. Yes. Christ alive, Emma swore, standing to her feet. Emma? Riley tried again. That's why you won't go to church with us, isn't it? Emma puzzled. Siobhan's pale face had gone completely white. Johnny was still in his chair, but his face was a convincing mix between the two girls. Kent was still confused as to what was happening. Because of your church, Emma blared with air quotes. And what church is that exactly? Siobhan took a shaky breath. It was the first time Kent had seen her so threatened by a girl who could pass for half a decade her junior. The Church of Jesus Christ, she clarified. Jesus Christ, Emma scoffed, though Kent couldn't tell if she was swearing or mocking. Of Latter-day Saints. Emma, enough! Riley rose to his feet. I thought you were Catholic, Johnny interrupted. Of course you did. Emma laughed frantically. She's Irish, we all did. Emma, she's not hiding anything, Riley defended. Isn't she? Emma burst. You certainly have been. You think Mom's going to react any differently? Kent was struggling to follow the back and forth of the conversation. Hold on, he pressed. I'm confused, so she belongs to another church. What's the big deal? Emma snapped. Of course you're confused, you theologically illiterate jackass, she cursed. She's in a freaking cult. Emma! It's not a cult, Siobhan defended, rising behind Riley. Emma threw her hands up in the air, manic. Oh, well, prove me wrong when your next set of golden plates appear in the woods. Emma, it's not that big of a deal, Riley tried. What the hell happened to you? Emma screamed, tears now threatening to flood from her eyes. What happened to the brother that used to push me to recognize right from wrong? What happened to me? He pushed back. You're the one that can't go 10 minutes without blowing up in someone's face over something as trivial as where they go to church. How dare you? She cried, shoving him backwards. Kent and Johnny both rose to their feet. How dare you diminish my God by calling something like this trivial? You abandoned me. You left me behind to figure things out for myself, and everything you ever taught me is just abandoned for the sake of this Mormon whore. Emma, all three boys yelled in collection. Don't you dare call her that, Margot shouted, pushing past Kent for the first time. Emma smirked, a disgusted look on her stained face. You're just siding with her so your dead kid can have his own planet, she spat. Emma, that's enough, Johnny forced, but she snapped herself away from his reach. Get off me, she writhed, storming off to her bedroom. Johnny tried to follow, but she must have burned the door handle as he grabbed it, swearing loudly and clutching his hand. Before any of them could respond, he stormed off to his own door and slammed it shut just as loud as she had. Again the room fell silent, with the four remaining standing there stunned. A mix of confusion, embarrassment, and hurt met Kent as he turned his eyes to Riley's face. Siobhan was less bothered than him, reaching out to Margot, who was still stone-faced looking at Emma's bedroom door. Are you all right? She asked. Margot kinked her neck before sitting down angrily in her original spot. I'm fine, she dismissed. Used to it at this point. Siobhan took a deep, unsteady breath, joining Margot's invitation to sit. I'm sorry that went as far as it did, she apologized. We knew it was a risk not to tell her, but... Riley shook his head, as angry as Emma had been only moments before. I didn't think she'd blow up like that, he grunted. Why are you sorry? Margot consoled. I wasn't her target, I just got hit in the crossfire. Siobhan shrugged, still white in the face. I'm used to it, she said. Not many Mormons in Bray. I've heard things like that for 18 years. Things finally clicked inside Kent's brain, embarrassingly slow after an exhausting weekend. Hold on, you're Mormon? Siobhan opened her mouth to speak, but no sound emerged. Instead, her face melted into an odd half-smile, half-cry, and after a few seconds' pause, she burst into confused laughter. You really are theologically literate, aren't you? The laughter turned to tears as Siobhan finally broke, but she rose away from Riley's consolation and embraced Kent in a tight hug. Riley's protective look made him hesitate to return the favor, but as Siobhan cried against him, Kent determined comfort was appropriate. When she finally broke away, he tried for a smile. I don't know what that means, he admitted. My mom used the term lapsed Catholic. Again, Siobhan choked out a laughing sob, this time receiving a hand against her back from Riley, who took her into a hug of his own. Why does Emma hate Mormons so much? Kent asked aloud, figuring someone amongst them would have a better idea. She doesn't, Riley defended, arm still around his girlfriend. Kent turned to Margot, who seemed to agree. I don't know what world you're living in, but that looked a lot like hate to me, he voiced. Siobhan turned, renewed, wiping tears out of her enormous brown eyes. It's not, she said, oddly siding with Riley in Emma's favor. She feels bad for me. It's the same reaction I always get. Kent turned to Margot, then back to the other two. Why would she feel bad about you being a Mormon? He asked. You weren't, abused or something, were you? Siobhan threw her head back, this time rolling her eyes with exhaustion. It's not a cult, she whispered into the air. It's a salvation thing, isn't it? Margot spoke up. Different Jesus, different heaven, things like that, right? Siobhan returned her gaze to the group, sighing. Yeah. What does that mean? Kent asked. The color had drained from Siobhan's eyes. She believes Jesus is God, she said, exhausted. We don't. Kent's confusion was met with a wave of unexpected certainty. His days in CCD were coming back to haunt him, as even he, irreligious as he was, found himself siding with Emma. But that's in the Bible, isn't it? He asked for more clarification. He was desperate not to agree with anything Emma said again, especially after what had just happened. Siobhan frowned. Kent, I'm not in the mood for debate. Well, thank God, Margot chirped. I've had enough religion for one night. Kent turned to her, giving a fist pump of agreement. That doesn't really make me feel better, Siobhan moped. No one's ever called me a whore before. Well, Margot tried. Welcome to the club, I guess. Siobhan shook her head, the light completely gone from her face. That doesn't either, she sighed. Then she turned to Riley. I think I'm going to head up. Kent had the right idea about Russian. Shiv, Riley started. No, it's my fault, she apologized. You had such a good plan and I screwed it up. The thing about my cousins just slipped. I'm sorry. Look at me, he demanded, and even Kent felt compelled. It is not your fault for my sister reacting like that. Well, then it was my fault in Bray, Siobhan responded. My family reacted the same way about you, and we dealt with it, Riley reminded her. Seriously, it's going to be all right. Siobhan sniffled, then wiped her nose with her shirt sleeve. She pointed to Emma's door. She might never talk to me again, she shrugged, tears returning to her pink face. Stop! A voice sounds the room. Kent froze, realizing that the voice was not Riley's, but his own. He swore, stepping closer to Siobhan and Riley. No one gives a... He stopped himself this time, remembering Siobhan didn't swear. You know what about anything Emma has to say. She doesn't matter in the slightest. She's small. She's no one left after what she just said to you. He paused, looking up at Riley and expecting a defensive reaction to stop him. It never came. You are so much bigger than she is, he continued. And you have us. Not just Riley, all of us. I don't care if you pray to a flying spaghetti monster. She can burn in hell for what she said to you tonight. And I like to think that if there is any God out there, he would side with the one who's been nothing but a saint to anyone around her. Not the stuck-up nepotist who treats her brother's girlfriend like she's garbage. There were plenty of choice words he would rather have used, but he was proud of himself for refraining on her behalf. Realizing he was almost shouting, he composed himself. We're here for you, he said calmly, gesturing at Margot and Riley. All of us. Nothing's going to change that. The words were sappy, and a more immature part of him was hoping for some kind of audience applause, but he settled for the genuine smile that washed over both her and Riley's faces. A slight glint had returned to her eyes. Again she sniffed back a tear. Thanks, Kent. I mean it, he doubled. Anything you need. You know we're here for you. The smile faded slightly and exhaustion fell over her freckles again. Thanks, she repeated. She turned to Riley. I am going to go upstairs, she decided. I'm tired. You sure? He asked. I'm sure, she smirked, trying for humor. If I need cheering up, I can always try reading my plates again. The joke didn't work on Riley. At least let me take you upstairs, he offered. If you're going to bed, I might as well too. No, Riley, she declined, pointing at the TV. The Texans are a terrible football team, who I've always enjoyed watching with my little sister, he explained. I'm not in the mood tonight. Siobhan took a breath far too deep for her body. Fine, she conceded. She turned back toward the other two. I appreciate you lot. Good night. Night, Shiv. They doubled. Then the pair turned around and walked solemnly toward Kent's door, Siobhan's long legs turning around the corner and disappearing up the stairs ahead of Riley. Feeling the weight of everything that had just happened, Kent reciprocated Siobhan's full-body sigh and collapsed into the couch, his head still turned to stare toward the staircase. Margot's voice was like a splash of cold water against his neck. You know, it doesn't matter how long you stare at her like that, she said. She's never going to return the favor. Kent turned around, shocked by the sentence. Excuse me? I mean, I don't blame you, Margot shrugged, her expression difficult to read. Girl's got killer legs. Kent fought the color rush into his face. What are you talking about? She kicked her socks up on the table, her own legs adorned in a pair of trimmed black leggings. It's not hard to notice, she accused. Just be glad Riley hasn't. He defaulted to defending himself, but as he struggled for a response, realized this might be exactly Margot's plan. Whatever she was trying to do, he was not going to let himself be the punching bag for a second time that hour. Hold on, he paused, feeling the heat flowing into his cheeks. Are you jealous? Immediately, Margot shook her head, dismissing him so quickly it looked almost suspicious. Of Siobhan? She laughed. Why would I be jealous of Siobhan? He didn't mean to let his impatience come out against her, but the night had already taken its toll on his self-control. I don't know, Mar, he raised sarcastically. Why would you be jealous of a girl dating your adopted brother? Margot laughed awkwardly again. Do you think you have a chance with her? She asked, and the question ripped into him like a set of talons, not because of its implications, but because Margot was supposed to be his friend, because she was now acting the same way Emma had only moments before. Dude, what are you on? He questioned. Did you miss the last 20 minutes? Siobhan's our friend. Margot just shrugged. I know she's our friend, she agreed. I'm just saying she's been dating Riley for 2 years and she hasn't even let him kiss her yet. That would drive you insane. She's not worth it. Especially since I don't see them breaking up anytime soon. Margot, He turned, wanting to continue arguing his defense, but again recognizing that her swing was almost certainly rooted in something else. Instead, he added, There's no way that's true. Of course it's true, she balanced. She's Mormon, remember? He scoffed, looking down at her feet on the coffee table. What, do you hate Mormons now too? No, she blushed. I'm just saying. Admit you're jealous, he demanded. Margot bit her lip to hide a reaction. I don't need to know why, he conceded. But I need you to stop acting like a 12-year-old and move on from whatever this is. Margot exhaled hard through her nose, staring at the staircase like someone had upstaged her in a beauty pageant. Fine. Where the hell did this come from? He raised. I'm jealous, okay? She snapped. I'm jealous of the fact that everyone else in the squad is taken and I'm not. I'm jealous of the fact that she can turn him down in front of everyone and him not caring one bit while I'm stuck chasing someone I can never have again, holding a sign advertising to the world what I apparently did. I'm jealous of the fact that you still stare at her the way you used to stare at me when Wyatt used to walk me to my room. Kent looked up at Margot's face, red with fury. What? He breathed. Margot, what are you talking about? Admit it, she scrambled. Admit that you don't find me attractive anymore. That I'm just some fat, ugly, used-up shell of what I used to be. Ken felt his mouth drop, confused and utterly blindsided by the question. Margot, what the hell are you talking about? She gave no immediate reply, only swallowing hard and gritting her teeth. Her legs fell off the table and tucked back below her knees. Admit it, she repeated. No, he cringed, looking in her eyes to find nothing but pain behind her harsh exterior. She was snapping again. He sighed, realizing it was his duty to bring her back. That was what he had promised to do. Mar, you're like the hottest girl I know, he assured. Still. It doesn't matter what happened. When's the last time you looked in a mirror? She was holding her breath, probably waiting for him to continue. People don't like Siobhan because she's attractive. They like her because she's honest with them, he claimed. And most of the time she puts other people before herself. When's the last time you tried to do the same instead of wallowing in your own feelings? Her face turned into a sharp frown. Are you trying to hurt me? She questioned. I'm trying to motivate you, he pushed. I'm sick of you sitting around moping all the time. Hell, I thought hockey was helping you. You certainly look better since the season started. Don't lie to me. I'm not lying to you, he shouted. Geez, Margot, if you need me to call you hot, then I'll call you hot. If you need me to constantly compliment you and make you feel appreciated, I'll do it. Just leave Siobhan alone. For God's sake, she's been through enough tonight. Get a little perspective. I can't get any perspective, Margot matched, rising to her feet. I can't, okay? Do you have any idea what it does to you? Physically? Do you have any idea how much it screwed me up? You were hardly even pregnant. The emotion vacated her body entirely, flooding Kent with a million pins of regret as soon as the words escaped him. Sound once again disappeared from the common room, filled only with the commentary from the football game. Margot, save it, she huffed, chewing her bottom lip. For a moment he expected her to rush out of the room, but she just returned with a look of indifference. It's fine. It's not, I said it's fine, she doubled, dropping back into her chair. It didn't hurt me when Emma said it. It doesn't hurt when you say it. Kent didn't know how to feel. Everything was happening too fast, without any control. Even his apologies were wrong. He stood there watching her stare at the doors for half a minute, unable to come to the right approach. He could continue to fight her and risk losing her, which is exactly what Wyatt had asked him to protect against. With a deep breath, he sat back on the couch and tried to stay patient and kind. I'm sorry, he said outright. I know how hard it's been for you. She shook her head, but no words came. All right, he admitted. I don't, but I can see it has been hard for you. And I know you still miss him. Of course I still miss him, she whispered. I do too, he stated, waiting for her to argue something stupid, like her missing him more. When again she stayed silent, he added, I miss both of them. He leaned forward to grab the TV remote and turn the screen black. Then he crawled back onto the couch and lay down, expecting her to need him there a while longer. You know, it hasn't been easy for me either, he added, hoping against the odds that Margot would see his continuation as empathy, rather than comparing traumas. Having them here, I mean. I met them both at her funeral. Margot offered him a soft glance. I'm sorry. Especially Siobhan, he chuckled, realizing how pathetic it was saying that after everything that had happened. Love her to death, but man, I'm looking forward to the end of the semester. This caught her attention. What? She perked. Why? He let himself relax in the cushions, staring up at the white ceiling. What color shirt does she wear in fitness? He asked rhetorically. I know you let me have it, but it's not easy watching someone else fill their old bedrooms. Even her accent. I know it's different, but none of ours stand out the way hers does. Margot leaned forward. Siobhan and Liz are nothing alike, she argued. Looks and personality, they're completely different people. I know, he agreed, not willing to forget the friend he had lost. But we replaced one Brit with another. Margot actually laughed, a surprised chirp that startled herself. Call her a Brit to her face and see what happens, she challenged. My money's on car bomb. Never mind, he huffed. You don't get it. Of course I get it, she disagreed. You loved her and you want her back. That's not hard to understand. He couldn't argue, but her understanding still felt incomplete. Before he could think of a follow-up, Margot rose to her feet and moved to the couch, swiping his legs away so she could sit on the far cushion. He inched up to match her. Can I ask you a question? She wondered softly, her eyes still on the floor. Of course you can, he said, thinking it was stupid that she needed to ask. She opened her mouth but stopped halfway through the breath, needing more time to think it over. Finally she asked, You and Liz, you two weren't... No, he dismissed, quick enough to make her notice. No, we weren't. Margot's eyes were staring right through him. There's a but, she realized. Kent sighed. Something about her look was pulling it straight out of him. Something he had never shared with anybody. Something he still had nightmares about on a regular schedule. She kissed me, he admitted. There was no shock on Margot's face, no surprise. And at the same time, there was no excitement or pity. When? Kent wiped behind his lip with his tongue. Right before she died, he recited. It was the last thing she ever did. Margot continued to look at him. She told me she loved me, he kept on. Then she kissed me and shoved me out the window. Still no response. Something inside him compelled him to protect himself. We didn't even like each other like that, he added. Are you sure? Came her reply, almost ethereal. He shook his head, waiting for her eyes to return. We didn't, he insisted. Or at least I didn't. I don't think I did. He was talking too fast now, and when he breathed, it came out in quick gasps. At least I didn't then, but maybe I should have. He rejected the idea frantically. I don't know, it's all warped by what happened. You're haunted by it, aren't you? She asked, and this time she sounded like herself. Confident, sure of herself. He swallowed hard, then nodded. How can you know that? Margot shrugged. Because I've been there before, she admitted. Trying to figure out if what you had was really what you thought it was. Kent was confused again. You and Wyatt had a kid together, he said unceremoniously. Of course what you had. I'm not talking about Wyatt, she hissed, then closed her eyes to compose herself. Never mind. It's not important who, just know that I understand that feeling. Kent sighed, looking down at his lap. And how do you know it's real? Margot swung her legs up onto the cushion and then turned, sitting cross-legged to face him. Her mouth quirked to one side and her eyes narrowed, like she was trying to read every inch of him. Turn and look at me, she commanded, and he obeyed, matching her posture while she continued her inspection, spending no less than a minute glancing over every feature. Then she leaned back and folded her arms. That was your first kiss, wasn't it? Ken felt his face redden again. What? Margot shrugged. That's why you're confused about it, she poked. You've never kissed anyone before, and that's why you feel like you should feel more than you do. Ken stared at her, bewildered. How could you possibly know that? She shrugged again. I'm good with people, she offered. Kent scoffed, shaking his head in disbelief. What if I told you it wasn't my first? Margot bit her lip, thinking. Then I'd say you're somehow over the ones before it, which, knowing you, would shock me. Or they didn't mean that much in the first place. Margot suddenly knit her eyebrows. Actually, knowing you, it means Liz was your first kiss you actually cared about. Kent sat there, wholly impressed by her assessment. Again, how could you possibly know that? He repeated. She leaned in to accentuate her whisper. I'm good with people. Kent shook his head. Of course you are, he breathed. Margot faced him square and leaned forward. Here, she said. Then she did the last thing he ever would have expected her to do. She kissed him. However open Kent's mouth had been when hers touched his, it stayed there, paralyzed. Margot sat back again and slacked her shoulders, staring at him as though nothing had happened. She cocked her head. And? Kent could hardly breathe, let alone answer a question. He sat there in shock, every synapse in his brain firing enough signals to make his vision blur. It got to the point that Margot leaned forward again, this time snapping a finger in his face to make sure he was still alive. And what? He gasped. And? How did that make you feel? She asked, apparently expecting a straightforward answer. She sat back like a teacher waiting for the class to solve a problem on the board. Again, it took a few seconds to catch his breath and compose an answer. Confused, he admitted, unable to word anything more. Good, she shrugged. Then you didn't like Liz. Kent's mouth returned to its default open position, his face contorted into a frustrated state of sheer discombobulation. What? He breathed. Margot was undoubtedly sure of herself. How could you possibly know that? It's a math problem, she visualized. 2 kisses, one of which needs solving, and the other's with me. If you're confused by both, then you didn't like Liz because you don't like me. Her logic was sound, except for one glaring uncertainty. How do you... he started, pausing to make sure he really wanted to ask the question. How do you know I don't like you? Margot put her hand on his knee in a placating gesture. Because you're attracted to me, she clarified. There's a difference. That doesn't mean I don't like you, he argued, cautious of the waters into which he was wading. Yes, it does, she explained, returning to her teacher posture. You're attracted to me. You like Emma. Kent squirmed as soon as she said it. After what she said tonight? He blasted. No, I don't. Yes, you do, Margot corrected. Tonight might affect those feelings, but until you can look at yourself in a mirror and say that to yourself with a straight face, you're lying to me every time you deny it. Well, it's not like I want to have feelings for her, he shouted, realizing too late that she could probably hear him if she were listening. It just happens. I can't explain it. Margot's hand was still on his knee, trying to calm him. I know, she sympathized. And you'll get over it. You deserve better than her. To that, Kent was confident he could agree. His face was red again, embarrassed and disappointed in himself that she could see that so easily. He hoped she was right, that she really was that good at reading other people. Otherwise, his confidence around the rest of the squad just took a massive plummet. Well, can you help me? He asked, unable to control that either. Margot's eyebrows curled. With what? She replied. You already have your reasons to stop. It just takes time. Ken tossed his hands over, searching for an answer. I don't know. A distraction? Margot stayed curious. What kind of distraction? He found himself stuck again, cornered into a box without the skills to get out. At this point, he was equally afraid he might offend her as much as he would embarrass himself. He was not even certain he wanted it, but sticking to Wyatt's promise was getting harder and harder every day. If this was still in line with that promise, then maybe it was worth the risk. Well, he steeled. You said that you're jealous of the others because they all have relationships. Margot crossed her arms. Kent hoped she could understand what he was trying to imply before he completely humiliated himself. But she hardly said a word, forcing him to say it out loud. And? Kent sighed again, a shaky breath that made him jealous of Siobhan's effect. And? He started. You and I could absolutely not. He had anticipated a no. This was worse. Kent was determined not to let her read his emotions again, flexing his jaw and keeping his breathing tight. Why? Because you've never dated anyone, she said plainly. So? She started laughing, adding even more insult to injury. Then she threw a hand through his hair and started fixing his bangs. He could only sit there and take it. This has nothing to do with you, she offered. Feeling a rush of self-assertion, he swiped her hand away. Just because I've never dated anyone doesn't mean I don't know that it's not you, it's me routine. Margot put her hands back in her lap. Okay, well, this time it really is me, she admitted. You have no idea how much you'd be taking on if I said yes. Everything you know about me, everything you put up with on a daily basis is my friend. That becomes infinitely worse if I make you something more, and I can't do that to you. Ken felt a rush of air escape through his teeth. Margot, that goes both ways, he started. But I know how to prepare for it, she reasoned. You have no concept for what that would even mean. After everything I've been through, me being your first, it would destroy you. So what, you want me to go date someone first so I know how to handle you? Margot shook her head. That's not at all what I'm saying, she corrected. If you can avoid me entirely, you'll be a lot happier. Kent bit into his bottom lip. Well, what if I don't want to avoid you entirely? He asked. What if I like spending time with you, even when you're like this as much as you are? At this, she smiled. Great, she appreciated. It goes both ways. That doesn't mean I think you should become attached to me. Well, how can I not become attached to you? He raised. You just kissed me. Yeah, and it didn't mean anything. The world fell as she said it, darkening like the screen on his phone just before it locked. Any feeling other than frustration and betrayal fled his body. He stared at her, empty. Margot held a hand up. That's not true, she amended. It didn't mean what you want it to mean. It can't. His brain was on autopilot, going through the motions to satiate its own curiosity. Why not? Margot sighed, lifting a hand to his face again, slowly, as though she were waiting for him to push it away again. He let it sit there, soft against his jaw. Because I care about you too much, she said, and he no longer cared if it was a lie. And you deserve your first time to be with someone who can share that with you without all the weight that I would bring. I can never give you the first time feeling you're so desperate for. I can see it. Every time you look at another couple. You deserve someone who can share in that excitement. I can't. If she was playing his emotions, it was working. Everything she said sounded so honest, so informed. She knew exactly what he wanted and gave him as clear of guidelines as she could. Suddenly he felt sorry not for himself, but for her. Everything he could still have and experience, she had lost completely. All right, he conceded, curious to her next answer. And once I've done that? Margot blushed then, nodding. Really? It's just a question, he defended. She looked him square in the eyes, her heart visible through the bright blue windows. I'm hoping we don't get to that point, she said. Again, not for my sake, but for yours. Stop sidestepping me, he criticized. Genuine question. If we come back to this conversation a year down the road, I've done everything you told me to do. Is it something we can try? Margot frowned. Are you asking me to make a relationship pact with you? He felt himself on the knife's edge, waiting for something, anything to push him off. But as sharp as it was, his balance was perfect. If that's what you want. The silence that normally ate him away from the inside was calming this time. She was taking time to think it over, which meant that even a negative required her to consider the chances. If anything, it was a boost to his confidence. All right, here's the deal, she proposed. Give it a year. You get over Emma. You get through a first real, actual relationship. No flings, dates, or one-off kisses. An actual definitive relationship. And if it doesn't work out, and if you can get over it enough to see me the same way you do now, then maybe I can try to move beyond Wyatt too. And if I think we're both ready for that, which I'm not guaranteeing in the slightest, she bit her top lip, uncertain for a second before nodding. Then maybe we can at least try. There were no explosions or fireworks this time, but the world brightened back up around Kent, like he had scored some minor victory. Keeping his expression solid, he held up his pinky finger. It was Margot's turn to slap it away. You're taking my word for it, she commanded. I'm not doing the Emma thing. Fine. He finally allowed himself to smile. But you better remember. Margot rose to her feet, stretching her back when she did. You're my best friend, she congratulated. Of course I'll remember. Kent finally allowed his heart to flutter. Where are you going? He asked. Where do you think I'm going? She volleyed. Exactly where you should be going, too. Russian is hard. Kent managed a small laugh. You expect me to focus on homework now? Why not? Margot shrugged, walking around the couch to the kitchen behind him. Kent continued staring at the black mirror in front, struggling to come to terms with the evening. Oh, what'd you do today, Kent? He narrated sarcastically to himself. Oh, nothing. Just finished up my work on the school play, watched a little football, saw my squad fall apart over religious differences. Then my best friend kissed me, rejected me, and then agreed to date me in a year if I could manage to find someone else before then. You know, the usual. Sounds like a normal day to me, Margot returned, the sound of her backpack slinging over her shoulder approaching him from behind. Then he felt her hand underneath his chin, and she tilted his head back over the edge of the couch. Good night, she said, and again she dropped her face to his, kissing him upside down. I love you. She walked away in silence, leaving Kent to stare up at the ceiling, unable to find the words to express how he was feeling.